Hello, how are we all doing? I've got a request for coaching on Musher Bridge, and I've looked at the run. I'm just going to go straight into it here, but it's quite similar to in time and pace to a previous run I've coached. I think it was Flora's time, so it might be worth watching that as well because there might be some good commentary there for that. But we'll still crack on with this because I think it was easier to just coach this by voice. So the first thing I would maybe look at is like see your very first MT. I think this is it. I apologise as the panning's a bit funny in this video player, but basically you do your first MT almost immediately, and then that's followed by delaying this one. Now, generally you don't want to do that first MT too early, especially if it leads to this situation. Because what happens is, if you do the first mini turbo really early, then the vast majority of the boost that you would get from that mini turbo is overlapped by the start boost. So you're actually getting very little benefit from it. And the problem also here is that because you sort of held this MT a bit, you then had more boost time. Now, if you were to delay the first MT a little bit more, you could probably just get the three LMTs out without delaying the third one, and then you'd have more boost time over the distance you've travelled. So that's automatically a time save right there. So just consider like chaining boosts is good, but you don't always have to go as fast as you possibly can to chain boosts. Sometimes it's better to spread the MTs out a little bit so that you cover more ground whilst in a mini turbo. Because otherwise, if you rush them and then you're not able to perform an MT immediately afterwards, then it's like you've got quite a lot of ground that you just don't have boost time, and you could easily get around that by just delaying your mini turbo slightly. So sometimes spacing is actually the way to go in this game. So the next main point here is you do a mono MT strat. So this is fine. I appreciate that, especially in lap one, doing a snaking strategy, like adding an RMT in the tunnel's hard. So this is a perfectly fine workaround. However, one thing you got to sort of consider is what the purpose of a specific strategy you're doing is. And so obviously mono MTs is easier here, but why is it easier? And the reason why it is easier is because it enables you to stay closer to the wall while still maintaining boosts as much as you reasonably can. So naturally, you don't do an RMT in here because it's going to be very difficult without hitting the wall. That's fine. But the problem is, you're then sort of shooting quite wide anyway. So it's like any benefit you would get from doing mono LMTs is lost because the whole idea is that it maintains a shorter distance of travel over a tighter line more easily than if you did a snaking strategy inserting an RMT in there. So if you're doing an LMT strategy like this, really, really make sure you focus on just pushing close to the wall, because otherwise it's effectively meaningless to do the mono MTs, because that's really the whole purpose, is to make it easier to maintain a good line. It's not just that it's easier to complete the track. Think about it as it's easier to maintain a good line, and then hopefully you'll be able to get more out of it that way. So there's not really too much to comment on here. Um, this the tunnel's funny for cornering here. I do think generally you'd be surprised at how much you can get away with pushing a little bit closer to the wall in the straight sections. Um, obviously it's most important that you're close to the wall on the sort of points, because then it's you're most likely to be cutting like we're traveling the least distance. But try not to be too scared of this wall. You can actually take it surprisingly tight, despite the fact that it's like a series of straights rather than an actual corner. But anyway, the shroom. You do the shroom in lap 3, and it doesn't really achieve much. This is a prime place to use the shroom. Thing is, like, you're wanting to avoid the bus and try and chain MTs. Okay, that's fair enough. But the problem is, you're going so wide of the bus. It's like you're not even sort of just trying to just miss it. You're going so wide that extra distance you're traveling is substantial. Like, if you push to be inside the bus, you're probably going to be roughly where my cursor is. That's already like a fair distance. And then you just need to use a shroom, and then you can then carry on and start your snaking after you're safely past the bus. That's a substantial time save, and probably a much more meaningful time save than the way your shroom was used. I'll show you later when we get to lap 3. But basically, if you're on this sort of pace at all, then if it's too difficult to go inside the bus without like sacrificing a few MTs, this is just where you shroom, and that's what the shroom is so good for on this track. But anyway, I'll not bother commenting on the missed MTs because that's fairly obvious. This MT here, I really don't like it. I don't like it at all, and I'll explain why. Effectively, right, you probably want to consider that if you're doing a mini turbo like this, you really need to sort of be considering why you're doing this RMT as opposed to just doing mono LMTs. So, in a situation like this, there's one simple reason why you do it. It's because you can chain your boost more effectively. And so the idea is maybe right. But the problem is here that when you have gone to do this RMT, you're not really fully round the corner as such. You're still a bit of the corner to go. And what ends up happening is, because you're doing this RMT now, you're really sort of going to push yourself quite a bit sort of towards the right, which is counterintuitive because obviously you're ultimately wanting to go close to this wall and then eventually round to the left. So because of this sort of early-ish RMT, you're really sort of facing the wrong direction. It's one that's, if you're not able to do it with a neutral MT or a Sasha drift, it's debatably not worth it because it can ruin your position. And like I said just a minute ago, you're doing this because you want to chain your boost more effectively, right? But because of your positioning, you're facing too far this way, so you overcompensate. So then what happens? You double hop. And immediately the double hop has rendered that RMT redundant, because the whole idea of it is it's used to like chain a boost whilst allowing you to then sort of like continue to chain the boost more effectively, whereas like obviously if you mono MT you can't chain the boost, but then you double hop anyway because you're out of position. So realistically you would arguably have been better just clinging to the wall more with fully LMTs, and you would have got virtually the same result. So it's probably just one to think about in general. If you've ever got a situation where you could potentially chain the boost with like an alternate facing MT, it's only worth it if you know for sure you can chain the boost. It's possible it might have been worth it if you'd done it one MT later. However, even then, you would probably need to know how to do neutral MTs to do it. But the way it's done here, obviously, because it's early, not fully around the corner, facing too far to the right, it doesn't really help anything. And then you end up having to compensate with a double hop anyway. So I would say in this situation, you're probably as well just doing you're doing mono LMTs and just really pushing to the wall, it would probably work out better in the long run. 2 seconds. So yeah, there isn't a huge amount more to say on this lap, I don't think. One thing I would say though is this is almost like a different, like, it may sound contradictory to what I've just said, but this is probably one situation where you actually would probably want to do the forced RMT because you got a lot more space, and I appreciate you had to maybe double hop to get around the truck here, but I think here, because it's like you've got further to go before you actually get to the corner, it's probably far more feasible to fit in an RMT here, so I would probably really try to force it here. So take it out, take the RMT out of the tunnel and put it here, basically. And then this is just more of the same from lap 1. The bus is further around the corner, so I wouldn't really suggest going around it lap 2 here. Like, I wouldn't suggest going inside it with a shroom. Just go around it, but don't be quite so scared of it. As long as you miss it, it doesn't matter whether you miss it by like a millimeter or like 3 cars widths. You know, as long as you miss it, you know, then you can still like carry on with your run. So you may as well push as close as you can. Worst comes to worst, you just try again. But when it comes to hazards like this in general on any track, if you play it too safe, you lose all the time anyway. So try not to be too scared of these hazards. Try and just sort of push more closer to them. Overall, it should help your times as you like reduce the distance you travel. As well as that, another point with these sort of things is like if you push closer to them, then it also means that you can actually get your RMT out sooner sometimes as well, because by the time your RMT sort of swings back this way, if you've pushed closer to the bus, then 2 seconds. Okay, excuse me, I really had to cough there, so I just I'll just cut it there. Yeah, so what I was saying was, if you generally are getting closer to the bus before like missing it, then your alternate facing MT, in this case the RMT, by the time it pushes you that way, you know, you're going to be past the bus anyway, so you can actually get the RMT out sooner if you just push closer. So this, like, generally, this is why you don't want to be miles away from the obstacles. Often you just want to be just missing them because it allows your strategy to flow better. Excuse me. Now in this lap here, I think the cars are generally much more dodgeable, and if the car is further around the corner, you should probably just force yourself to go inside it, even if you have to delay an MT slightly, because once it's further around the corner, the extra distance you have to go round it is so substantial that the time loss is massive. So it's like you're all the way out here, whereas like realistically at this moment in time you could be about here, and then that sort of continues, because it's like by the time you get to this point here you could be more like here, and that's quite a substantial sort of time loss just simply because of the distance you've travelled to get here. So I would really strongly recommend, anytime a car's more in this sort of position, like it's actually on the corner, force yourself inside it, because the time save is substantial and it's well worth doing. And then this room, I mean, it's like it doesn't really achieve that much. I mean, I get it is faster than doing, let's say, mono LMTs, but I would say doing mono LMTs here and then going inside the bus at the end of lap 1 is much better than going outside the bus and then choosing the shroom here It just feels for the most part like this room doesn't achieve too much. Like you could save so much time elsewhere. So that's another part I would say. I think that's mostly all I have to say about this run, really. And then this part here with this car, I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. It's like you're actually as well just getting this LMT out straight away, because then you can probably then get your RMT out and use the outward swing of the RMT to just simply go around that car. Whereas I think because you're so scared of it, you end up like hemorrhaging quite a lot of time just sort of waiting to do mono LMTs. So yeah, this is one of those situations where you probably actually want to, again, don't be scared and delay it. Just push on with MTs. I think you would actually see a surprising result here. This car isn't nearly as big a problem as it maybe appeared in the run. I think that's mostly it, really. Aside from the obvious things, just like try and push close to the corner and that in certain places. But hopefully, what I said has made sense for this coaching. I do think there's like certain parts that are like fairly sort of good points for just overall driving as well. So like, try and make sure if you delay your first MT here, you manage to sort of space your boosts better. You got less boost time overall. If you do mono LMTs, really push to the wall, otherwise the benefit's lost. Shroom inside there instead of going around. It would definitely be the better way to use a shroom. And then wherever it is. On this corner here, just probably go for full LMTs and take this RMT out, because this RMT ultimately didn't achieve anything for you. And then I think that's mostly it, really. So let us know in the comments if you've got any questions. Hopefully that made sense and it wasn't just too rambly. But yeah, anyway. Otherwise, have fun beating this time. I'm sure you could shave easily a second and a half off this time with the improvements and then the no missed MTs. So yeah, that's all I have to say. So I'll see you all later. Bye!